English muffins are one of those foods I've always bought at the grocery store. And until recently, it never even occurred to me that I could make them from scratch. I love English muffins. They either make a great breakfast sandwich, or if you're in a hurry, you can just throw them in the toaster and put some butter on them, and they turn out delicious. So today, I'm making English muffins completely from scratch to find out if the homemade version is softer, tastier, cheaper, or whether it's worth just buying them at the grocery store. Hi everyone, and welcome to From Scratch Fridays, where every week we're making something that most of us usually buy at the grocery store to see if it's actually worth making ourselves. By the end of the video, we'll score the homemade English muffins compared to the store-bought English muffins in terms of time, cost, and flavor. And the homemade version, I think, will have a lot to prove because the store-bought English muffins usually aren't that expensive. They taste fine, especially if you're putting butter on them or making them into a sandwich of some sort, but they do have a lot of random ingredients in it. So make sure you stay tuned to the end for our comparison. The good news about this recipe is you only need 7 ingredients: flour, cornmeal, honey, milk, butter, yeast, and salt. So the ingredients are really simple. The biggest investment with this recipe is time. With this recipe, you have to go through 2 different rising steps, one before you shape the dough and then one before you cook it. But the good news about this recipe is if you want to make a double batch to save some time, English muffins do freeze really well, so something to keep in mind. All right, so let's dive into the recipe. The first step is that we're going to mix 2 3/4 cups of flour, a tablespoon of the active dry yeast, and then the last ingredient that we need for this step is the salt, and we just need 1 1/4 teaspoon of that. So I'm just gonna do a little generous. All right, and one thing to note with this recipe is you do want to use high protein all-purpose flour or a bread flour. So in this case, I'm using King Arthur's because it's high protein and it has a consistent amount of protein in each batch. So it's great. Okay, so now that all of our flour mixture is mixed, the next step is to prep the milk. So we need about 11 ounces of milk. And I'm just gonna pop this in the microwave real quick. So even though I am using active dry yeast, heating the milk up a little bit just helps get that yeast going. And to get cold milk up to about that 110 degrees Fahrenheit level, it should be probably about a minute depending on what your microwave is. Okay, and now that it's been going a minute, I'm just gonna read it really quick with my instant read thermometer. And if you don't have an instant read thermometer, that's completely okay. You just wanna touch the milk to make sure it feels warm to the touch. It shouldn't feel like hot or uncomfortable to touch, but it should feel slightly warm. Okay, so now that the milk is at the required temperature, I'm gonna go ahead and add the 2 tablespoons of honey. And sometimes, depending on my mood, I actually use a scale to measure this because it makes it way easier because honey is so viscous. Okay, and then after you add the milk to that warm honey, just give it a nice stir to make sure that the honey is sort of well incorporated into the milk. Okay, and now that that milk and honey is all mixed together, we're gonna pour it into our flour mixture. And then I'm gonna mix that together. All right, so now that everything is mixed together, the next step in the process is to let the dough rise until it's about doubled in size. And usually this takes about an hour, but does depend on the temperature of your house. All right, so it's been about an hour, and as you can see, our dough has doubled in size. So our next step here is to shape the dough into rounds. And there's a couple different ways you can do this. I personally like using a scale and then weighing it out, since we know each English muffin should be about 80 grams. So I just put this on my scale, I tare it, and then I just take off enough so that it's about 80 grams. I roll it into a ball, and this dough is pretty sticky, but I just do my best to kind of make it a uniform dough, make it a uniform ball. And then I just go ahead and put it on the parchment lined baking sheet that has some cornmeal all sprinkled on it. And then I just flatten it so it's about 2 inches or so thick. So these aren't going to be the most perfectly round English muffins you've ever made, but that's okay. And then I just continue doing that for the rest of the dough. All right, so I have all of my English muffins on the parchment. I flip them over so both sides can have the cornmeal on them. And now our next step is just to wait another hour until while they rise again. And so I'm just gonna cover it and let them sit. So the English muffins have risen for another hour, and you can see they've definitely puffed up a lot. And so now the next couple final steps of the recipe are we're gonna fry them on both sides. And then after they've all been fried on both sides, we're gonna put them in the oven at 325 degrees and let them cook. So we can go ahead and get started with that. I have my burner on about a medium heat. And for each round of English muffins that I'm cooking here on the stovetop, I'm gonna put about a tablespoon of butter in the pan and let that melt. Butter is all melted, so now I'm gonna put my first English muffins in the pan. And you're going to cook them for about 2 minutes on each side, or until they're brown. It's been about 2 minutes, so I'm just going to check one here real quick, see if they need a little longer. They're good to be flipped. Now that they've cooked for 2 minutes on the other side, I'm going to go ahead and take them off and put them on my baking sheet. Okay, and then before I put my next set in, I'm just going to melt another tablespoon of butter in the pan. Okay, now that butter's melted, I'm just going to put my final set of English muffins in. Now that these are done frying on the stovetop, I'm going to go ahead and put them in the oven at 350 degrees for about 10 to 12 minutes or until they're done. I just took our English muffins out of the oven, and as you can see, they look great. In many ways, they look very similar to the store-bought English muffins. Hello, my Coco. But to make sure they were done, I just temped them. Ooh, they smell so good that he wants some. I temped them to make sure that their temperature was between 205 and 210 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a really easy way to see if your bread is done. And so now I'm going to give them a taste test. I did heat, okay buddy, okay buddy, I know they're good, but these are not for you. All right. I did heat up the store-bought English muffin in the toaster just to make it a fair comparison, since our English muffin is warm. But I'm just going to go ahead and try them to see how they compare. But first, as you can see from the interior, the store-bought English muffin definitely has a lot more of those nooks and crannies. It's a little bit more airy. The dough that we cooked at home is definitely a little bit denser. But let's see how they are in terms of taste. He back again. This is so moist, and it's like perfect. It's a little bit crunchy on the outside, but very soft and fluffy on the inside. You get like a little bit of sweetness, I think, from the honey, but not overpowering. Okay, so now for our store-bought one. That one's definitely okay. It's a little bit dry. It's a little bit more cardboardy. But I think, a lot of times with the store-bought one, you're going to put butter on there. You're going to put something else to kind of help cover its lack of flavor. So I would say that in terms of flavor, the homemade ones are definitely way richer, way moister, have a better flavor just on their own compared to the store-bought ones. But if you put butter on them, I still think that ours would probably be a little bit better, but probably more comparable. Now the question is, how do the homemade English muffins compare to the store-bought English muffins in terms of cost? And for this cost comparison, we did it on a per 6 English muffin basis because the store-bought English muffins come in packs of 6. For the homemade English muffins, 6 comes to $1.47 compared to $4.49 for the store-bought ones. In terms of the hands-on time, the homemade English muffins took about 30 minutes of active time plus the 2 hours of rising. Okay, so now the real question is, are these worth making from scratch at home, or should I just go ahead and keep buying these at the grocery store? And I think with the English muffins, although there is a lot of sort of time where you have to wait for them to rise, the active steps are so short, and the homemade English muffin tastes so much better, is so much cheaper, doesn't have all the random ingredients that the store-bought English muffin does, that I think I would definitely continue making these at home. So that's a wrap on From Scratch Friday. Let me know in the comments if you try making your own English muffins, or if you have any ideas for what you would like to see on future From Scratch Fridays, let me know as well. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.